Hello grade 9, this is Batul, an English teacher from Taqarrub School. So in today's video, we're gonna start with a book to the max and the new unit, which is unit 4 on page 40, that talks about detective stories. And now before reading the text about crime scenes, we're gonna have the listening and speaking. Now let's read this text, then answer the following questions after the text. Detective stories. John is a reporter. Today he's interviewing Peter Smith, a famous detective story writer, because he wants to write an article entitled Detective Stories. Now we're gonna start with the speech here. John, good morning. My name is John. I am writing an article about detective stories. Would you please explain to the readers what is meant by detective stories? Mr. Smith, well, a detective story is a novel or short story in which a detective solves a crime by observing and interpreting evidence or clues. John, now, this paragraph. John, what do you mean by clues? Mr. Smith, I mean the circumstances surrounding the crime and the characters involved in it. John, are the readers sometimes free to discover and interpret the clues themselves? Mr. Smith, yes, of course. Some of the stories can give the readers a chance to follow the detective's thought process and try to beat him to the solution. John, what distinguishes detective stories from other kinds of fictional stories? Mr. Smith, well, the presence of the detective and his use of reason to solve the crime, that's what makes all the difference. John, who is considered the best-known writer of detective stories? Mr. Smith, perhaps the best-known of the contemporary detective story writers is the English author Agatha Christie, famous for her surprise endings and for her detective Hercule Poirot. John, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and time with us. Mr. Smith, you're welcome. Now let's answer the questions. So, A, answer the following questions. Number 1, why is John interviewing Peter Smith? So, the answer is here. John is a reporter. Today he's interviewing Peter Smith because he wants to write an article entitled Detective Stories. So the answer is because he wants to write an article entitled Detective Stories. Question number 2. What does Mr. Smith do? So, what does he do for a living? So, Mr. Smith, he is a famous detective story writer. Yes, so Peter Smith is a famous detective story writer. This is why John is interviewing him for more knowledge about detective stories. Question number 3. How can readers discover and interpret the clues themselves? So the answer is here. Are the readers sometimes free to discover and interpret the clues themselves? Yes, of course. Some of the stories can give the readers a chance to follow the detective's thought process and try to beat him to the solution. So the answer, some of the stories can give the readers a chance to follow the detective's thought process. And now B, put true for put T for true or F for false. Number 1. John is a reporter. Is he a reporter? Yes, so true. T. Number 2. Mr. Smith writes mystery stories. No, he writes detective stories, so the answer is F. Number 3. Clues are circumstances surrounding a crime. True. Number 5 or number 4, readers can discover the clues themselves. So some of the stories, yes, so the answer is true. 5, detective and fictional stories are similar. False, because they said what distinguishes detective stories from other kinds of fictional stories? The presence of the detective and his use of reason to solve the crime. That's what makes all the difference. So there is a difference. So they are not similar. Number 6. Agatha Christie is the most famous contemporary detective story writer. True, because they said that the best known of the contemporary detective story writer is the English author Agatha Christie, famous for her surprise endings and for her detective Hercule Poirot. Now D, what does the underlined word contemporary mean? So here the word contemporary, when we say about the writer, he's a contemporary writer, it means living or occurring at the same time. Living at the same time. So next time we're gonna have the text about crime scenes and give the main ideas and the summary of the whole text. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.